Okay guys, here's an example of a do-while loop and how to get your way around the worksheet. So oftentimes you're going to have to loop through cells on a worksheet, like go down a row or go across a column. So let's look at how you can do that. This is a practical example. In the loops module, I'm going to write a subprocedure and I'm going to call it sub do while loops I'll call it row column. Okay, so we're going to work with the worksheet and we're going to see how we can go across rows or go down columns. First thing I'm going to do is take this bit of code and paste it in. All this does again is I have a worksheet here called loops. It's going to select the worksheet and clear the contents. And then I have to declare some variables here. So I want a variable to store a row number and a column number, and then I want an integer variable. So I'll do this dim num as integer. There's my integer variable. I'll do x row as long. There's my row variable that can hold the row numbers, and x call as long. And why am I doing long for my row numbers and column numbers? It's because the worksheet has over 32,000 rows. It has rows of 1,000,000 and columns out to, I'm not sure, bigger than 32,000 columns. So you want to have variables that can hold numbers bigger than 32,000. That's why when you're dealing with rows and columns and you're going to store the row number or column number, use long variables. Okay, so now we can write some code here. And what I want to do is, let me set num equal to 10. I'll set x row equal to 1 and x call equal to 1. And then what I'll do is do while x row is less than or equal to 5. And then I'll put loop. So here's my do while loop. And then within this, I want to put some values onto the worksheet. So I'm going to do cells x row comma x call dot value. I'm going to make that equal to whatever's in num. And then what I'm going to do is increment the row variable. X row is equal to x row plus 1. So this increment the row variable. And then I'm also going to increment num. Num equal to num plus 1. And these are common coding things that you'll see. Incrementing a variable. You want to increment this variable. You just take x row is equal to x row plus 1. These are very common things you're going to see like this. X row is equal to x row plus 1. Num is equal to num plus 1. Because oftentimes you want to go across a column and loop across a column. Well, how do you do that? You have to stay in the same column. And well, actually no, you want to increase your column, right? So, or you want to increase your row, and to do that you just want to add 1 to your row variable, and this is how you would do it. You would just take your row variable, whatever it is, and add 1 to it and put it back into your row variable. So now you have a new row variable that is what you had before plus 1. That's why you see the same thing on both sides here, because all you're doing is assigning 1 more to what you currently have. And up here, I should say a little bit about this, is that this again, we didn't write this. This is I believe it's a range object, and it takes two numbers, and this basically designates a cell on the worksheet. So whatever row column combination you're in, if I put 1 1 in here, then I'm going to be in cell 1 1, row 1 column 1. So this is the row variable, this is the column variable. And you could see that because it's, if I put the comma there, it pops up this little help window that says row index, column index. So you're passing in numbers as the row index and another number as the column index. And then you want to assign something to the value of that range. So you do dot, you use the dot operator and you can assign the value. So let's step through this and let's see what we see. First thing is that I select the sheet, I clear the content, so there that number disappeared. I assign num equal to 10, xrow is equal to 1, and here you can see that in the locals window, num is equal to 10, xrow and xcol equal to 1. Now this while xrow is less than or equal to 5, which means as long as this evaluates to true, this condition, this code's going to run. So is xrow, is 1 less than or equal to 5? Yes, it is. So now here, xrow is equal to 1, xcol is equal to 1. So I'm going to put the number 10 into cell 11. And there you see I put the number 10 into cell 11. Row 1, column 1. Now I'm going to increment xrow here. And there you can see xrow is 2 now. And the number is going to also be incremented. Let's increment it by 10. And I'm going to increment it by 10 instead of 1. So there you can see num now has 20 in it. Now it goes to this loop line, which basically just says send it back up to the top of the loop and evaluate this condition again. Xrow is now 2 because I added 1 to it here. And because 2 is less than 5, it runs the code again, and there you can see 20. 20 was put in, row number 2, column number 1. And then if I continue this, you can see what's happening. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then it stops. So what I just did is I started with row 1, column 1, and I was able to write a loop that did this. That looped down until I got to row 5 and put values in it. And if I go over here, I can, let's say I want to go to row 10, and I want to, instead of increasing the row by 1, let's say I want to increase it by 2, and now let's see what happens. Look what happened here. I started in row 1, and I go to row 10, and I increase my row by 2. So now you have this blank row in here. I'm increasing the row by 2, and I'm putting values in here, the numbers, that num, whatever's in this num variable. You can also increment the column variable. So what if I do this? Xcol is equal to xcol plus 1, and I'll do this increments the column variable. So now watch what happens. Now I'm not staying in before, because I didn't increment this. Xcol was always 1. That's why everything is in column 1. But now that I'm incrementing the xcol, I'm going to have stuff in these other columns, in column B, C, D, etc. So when I run this now, look what happens now. I get 10, and then the next number is in the next column, and it's down a couple rows, and I get, and then I move over to the next column and down a couple rows. If I change this back to incrementing the row by 1 and incrementing, go down to row 15, if I hit run, what's going to happen now is that I get this diagonal structure, right? Because every time through the loop, I am increasing a row, so I'm going from this row to this row, and I'm increasing a column, and that's where I put the value. And then I'm increasing the row again in the loop, and I'm increasing the column. So that's why I have that value in that cell. Then I increase the the row again, so I go down to this row, and I increase the column, so I go over here, and that's why this value's here. Because each time through the loop, I'm doing this, increasing the row and increasing the column. And the number is increasing because I'm doing that. Num is equal to num plus 10, so you see 10, 20, 30. And why does it stop down here at row 15? Well, it stops down there because I did this. X row is less than or equal to 15. It's going to do all this code while X row is less than or equal to 15. That's all I wanted to show in this video. And the main takeaways, I say the most important line in this code is this line right here. Because once you know this, the fact that you can put in numbers for a row and numbers for a column, now you can loop down rows and you can loop across columns, and you could check values, you could do all kinds of stuff. You can write if statements, throw an if statement in here and check the value of cells or something. So let's do this. Alt F11. Instead of putting a value there, now that we have values in these cells, I'm going to comment out this clear contents thing so that I don't lose this data. And I want to say anything that's over 50, I want to multiply it by 10. So how would I do that? How would I multiply, look at these numbers, and anything over 50, I want to multiply by 10. So I want this to be multiplied by 10, this to be multiplied by 10, everything over 50. Well, to do that is real easy. Now, I want to go from, row 1 down to row 15, and I want to increase my column and row like I did before. But then all I got to do is write an if statement. If cells x row x col dot value, if that value is greater than 50, then I'll put the end if here. Then what am I going to do? I'm just going to take whatever's in that cell. I'm going to make that cell equal to whatever in it times 10. That's all I would do, and watch what happens now. So now everything over 50 is going to be multiplied by 10. So if we just run this now, I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then I have 600, 700, 800, 900. So this video was meant to just show you how you can put values into the worksheet using this cells, I think it's a property, the cells property, where you pass in a row index and a column index. So you could maneuver your way around the worksheet, and then if you want to check the worksheet, for whatever reason, like I want to check these values in these, go down this row, go across this column, you can do that by doing something like this, looping over your range. And in our range, we change the row and column, but you don't necessarily need to change the row and column. You could do that, but you have full control over it. And you could loop over this, and you could check stuff with if statements, like if this cell is greater than that or less than this, then I want to do this, or all kinds of stuff like that. So that's all this video was. Now you know how to use a while loop to maneuver your way around the worksheet, and also if you wanted to insert values or check values using if statements inside the loop. Okay.